Hello, everyone. My name is Austin Mandeville. I am hosting the Instructor Methods class that you're enrolled in at this time. It is a new virtual asynchronous Instructor Methods course with a synchronous presentation component at the end. And I wanted to just take a minute to walk with the course through you all and take a minute to welcome you in, tell you a little bit about myself, how I have developed this course. It is a little different than many other instructor methodology courses out there based on some of the things that I have learned as an instructor, as an educator. And I'm looking forward to presenting this course to you all so that you can start your journey, your exciting journey as instructors in the EMS industry. So welcome in and a little bit about myself. I am much like you, I'm sure, was originally a paramedic, kind of turned educator. I have had a lot of experience in various types of educational worlds, if you will. I actually, and I tell this story because I think it's important to understand my background, kind of where I come from, what I've seen, and what I've done as an educator. I give this information to my students as well. I started out much like many folks do in high school, tired of the system and working against the system. And so I am a high school dropout who later decided to go back and get a GED and then started through the community college system after that, working my way up through a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and now a doctoral candidate. So I am the one-off story, I guess, if you will. But you wanted to make sure and share that with everyone, so everyone knows that it's possible, and this becomes really important in education that we don't discount anybody because we never really know where they end up. Crazy kind of start to education. I started out as an EMT, worked as a paramedic, started working as a training officer for a private training agency in the state of North Carolina. While I was working as a paramedic, went back to being a paramedic. And just kind of progressed my way through into education from adjuncting at technical schools. Eventually, I landed a program director position of a paramedic program, and then moved out of the program director role into a professorship. So I am a program coordinator at Western Carolina University, an assistant professor in their EMC program. Also now directing the training institution that I was the paramedic program director for. So I'm the executive director for Low Country Regional EMS Council. So it's a true rags to riches. Well, not riches because there's nothing rich in EMS, but a rags to paperwork story, I guess, if you will. And I've done every job in between. I have worked through, like I said, an EMT, field paramedic, supervisor, training officer, director, assistant director. I've done just about every job that there is out there. And I really didn't find my passion until I moved into education. And what I have realized in education is that we are not really good at learning what being an educator really is. And so this is a lot of where I have developed this course from. I want to introduce you to perspectives and concepts that we really don't see a lot in typical EMS education. Having been someone who has been through, a formal education process, the technical schools. Most of my learning was done through distance learning, through virtual education. Some of it was on campus in a traditional classroom. It wasn't until much later in life that I realized, or much later in my educational career, that I really did realize that education is more than teaching. And I'm going to talk to you just a little bit today about what that difference is and what I hope that you can get out of this course that you're going to see today. So, first of all, let's talk about what the expectations are, what this course is, what this course is not. This course is a 40-hour, roughly a 40-hour clock course, or 40 clock hour course. So you're not going to be a perfect educator or instructor or teacher when you leave this class today. This class is only to introduce you to concepts, introduce you to ideas and the process of what it takes to become an educator, because educators aren't born by taking a single class or even lots of classes or even obtaining degrees in education. Educators are built over time. It takes time and experience to really understand what it is to be an educator, right? What's the difference between being a lecturer or just a teacher, someone who reads PowerPoint slides, who stands up and disseminates information to the classroom versus someone who actually engages in the facilitation of learning, who can mentor students, who can take every aspect of the classroom and make it a learning experience, not just a free flow of information as you would see in a lecture. And this art, and it is very much an art, and there's a lot of science to it, but it is an art, and it takes many, many years to master. And so what I hope for you to get out of this class is the foundations for you to start this process, to start this journey in becoming a good educator and becoming an educator, because it's not a short road, and it's not an easy road, and it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of reflection and introspection and development of what you think you need to be as an educator and how you want to get there. This class is going to cover your introduction to methodology, instructional methodology. I don't call this course instructor methodology as much. Oftentimes you'll hear me refer to it as instructional methods, because that's really what I'm teaching you. I'm really going to have you walk through the methods that are used in instruction so that you have a base foundation and understanding of the tools that are at your disposal to achieve the educational goals that you need to achieve. This class will not turn you into an educator, but it will start that process and that road. So as we go through, I do want to talk a little bit about the different types of education. And there is a hierarchy to educators, and a hierarchy to how we approach education with students and how you will build yourself over time into being an educator and a mentor, as opposed to a lecturer, an instructor, a facilitator. The hierarchy really starts at the lecturer level. And unfortunately, in most of our professional worlds in EMS, this is where we live. A teacher stands and delivers information, students listen and take notes, and we think that this is what instruction is. This is what teaching is, this is what learning is, and this is how all of the exchange of information that occurs in education should happen. And this is at the very most basic level of instruction. This is not how students learn. This is not the most effective way to teach them or interact with them. In fact, it really produces very, very little knowledge on the student's part. So this is where you will start. This is where everyone starts. This is what we think that we're doing when we teach. But in reality, this is just lecturing. This is just storytelling. It's just conveying information. It is a one-way direction of information from the presenter to the receiver. And this is where we all start, and then we slowly begin to work ourselves up and build methods and techniques through our educational philosophy and pedagogy and andragogy to build our way into being an educator. And the next sort of level in this hierarchy is an instructor. Okay, an instructor drives content through group lessons. And so this is kind of leveling up to the next step, if you will, whereas we're no longer just going to free flow information to the audience, but we're going to drive content through group lessons, through guided and independent practice. So we're going to set out some educational objectives, and then we're going to instill those objectives through some group practice or group work together. Now, these pieces are not mutually exclusive. They work together. But as you develop your teaching style, as you develop your art, if you will, you'll learn how to take individual pieces of these to build this learning goal and to build yourself as an educator. The next sort of level that you reach is the facilitator level. And this is really in my opinion, the minimum amount of involvement, or should be the minimum standard for education, especially what we do in EMS. And this is where the teachers and the students are driving content together. And you're going to see some more information about this later in the course, the difference between assessment for learning and assessment of learning. Okay, this is where we're taking information that we've presented to the students, all right, through a lecture sort of style of education, a very low level intensity, low level of interaction. We've moved up to driving content through application or guided practice, if you will. And then we've now moved into the world where we can take a look at what the students are learning and tailor our lessons and tailor our education to move in the directions that the students need to move in. A lot of times when we hit this level of education, or education delivery, we're watching for responses from the student, and we're no longer just following a strict PowerPoint deck of slides or a very simplistic skills practice session. We're able to move and adjust on the fly what the students need to be able to practice more of, or be able to have information reiterated to them in a different way. This is where education becomes give and take. So we're giving information, but we're also taking feedback, and whether it's intentional feedback or it's subconscious feedback or it's reading the room as an educator, and understanding that that feedback that we're getting doesn't necessarily mean that the student may not be competent. It may be that we've not delivered the education in a manner that's digestible to them. And this requires awareness. It requires insight into your class, insight into your students, and really becomes engaged learning at this point. And then sort of the last, I won't say the last step, but the highest level of this is kind of the coaching style of teaching. And this is, again, we're using all of these pillars before. We're delivering content, ability to deliver content through lecture. We're interacting through guided practice. We are receiving feedback, again, whether spoken or implied, from the students to adapt our educational approach to solidify their learning. And then we're able to, at the highest level of educational ability, adapt and tailor individual lessons to individual students. And this is a complex process which involves presenting the information in sort of the previous tiers and the previous hierarchy, but then not only be able to receive feedback and interpret that feedback from those students to adjust, but to be able to make multiple adjustments at any given time for any given student. And I know what you're thinking, we can't make a one-on-one class. No, you're right, we can't. But we do have a responsibility as educators to recognize that individual students may learn in or thrive in different types of scenarios and different types of situations to learn better or learn worse. And it's our duty as educators to be able to not only recognize this, but be able to tailor our information to adapt to those students' needs. Not 100% of the class needs to focus on them, but we do need to be able to interweave pieces of our educational delivery to approach those students and to foster the learning in those students. Once you're able to sort of put all these pieces together, right, this is what being an educator becomes. We're able to take all of these smaller components and put them together and be able to foster learning, be able to encourage self-study and development and professional development. And I tell students this all the time when I'm in the classroom with them, and many of them, they kind of laugh and chuckle and it moves on. You know, we talk about being an instructor, and I tell them, I'm not your teacher, right? I'm here, I'm not doing this for you, I'm not teaching you. My job is to guide you through the information so that you can learn it. We do that through many, many different processes, but I'm not teaching the student. I'm creating an environment where the students have access to the information and they're able to comprehend it and digest it and use it. They're able to use it for their quest for knowledge, whether that's in a certification course, whether that's in a continuing education course, or whether that's in a degree course that I'm teaching. My job to teach is less about being a teacher and more about being a mentor, being a coach, being able to provide them information and then also provide them with the tools and the feedback for them to digest that information and actually learn it. And so hopefully what you will see at the start of this course or as you progress through this course are the tools that we're going to use to get you here. This level of education should be what we're striving for. However, this takes years of practice. And so it certainly needs to be intentional on your part to work in this direction. Okay. One thing that you certainly want to keep in mind too, and one of the very first activities that you're going to do in this course, you're going to develop an educational philosophy, right? And the educational philosophy really is, one, what do you believe is your place in education? Okay. What do you bring to the table? What is your specific approach? What is your position within the educational system that you plan on working in? And what is your technique? What do you think your art is? How are you going to achieve those goals? What is it that you're going to bring to the table that's going to not only lecture information and guided practice and envelop the students in coursework and group work and activities that define their learning abilities and develop their learning abilities, but what do you bring to the table that's unique? That's part of that education philosophy, is starting to build on that. Because one thing that you'll realize as you, if you haven't already, if you're involved in education, and you may have some of this, is that the students are going to remember you. It's not a matter of if they're going to remember you. It's what they will remember about you or how they will remember you. A student, for us, if you teach, if you're moving into education full time, even if you're moving into continuing education, you're moving into, I'm going to do an in-service program. You're the only teacher they're ever going to see in in-service. They're going to remember you. Education as a journey for the student is impactful. They're going to remember who their teachers were, and whether they were good, whether they were bad. And so when you start to think about who you're going to become and how you're going to become this educator, you really want to look down the road and think about how do I want my students to remember me? For one, I want them to learn something, right? They need to learn what I'm presenting them or working them with a content or curriculum that I'm moving them through. But what else do you want them to remember about you? How do you want them to remember your class? You have the ability in education to make life-changing impacts in students without ever even realizing it. And a lot of times we don't realize how much impact we have. And so as you move through this journey of becoming an educator, there are things that are crucial for you to remember. One, you need to have reflection on yourself. You need to be able to say, it's okay for me not to know something. In fact, the only thing that I really need to be certain of as an educator is that I have more to learn. And that's how I approach every lesson. Sure, we have students that, question for the sake of questioning, and they want to, prove that the educator or the teacher or the instructor, they've got something to prove. They don't want them to think they know what they're talking about. Okay. But engage those students. Engage those students, interact with those students. You will be amazed at how many times, if you are open to discussion and open to ideas with your students, how often there's a perspective that has been presented that you may have never thought of. The only thing that I know for certainty is that I don't know everything and I need to improve. And you will have that as an educator, and you should develop that mindset. And the other thing is, be self-aware. Sit back and look at yourself as an educator. Who do you think that you are? Who do your students perceive you are? And then where do you want to be? Which teacher, which professor, which educator, which lecturer, what style do you want to be? What do you want the perception of you in that classroom to be? And then how do you get yourself there? So self-awareness and reflection are extremely important as you work through this process. Nobody is perfect. Everybody needs improvement. And that's true for educators. The teachers may often be experts, but that doesn't mean they know everything. They can be experts in the field and still have lots of information that they're not aware of. So be remiss of that. Be aware of the necessity for you to continue to learn and develop over time and develop your craft and your art as an educator. I welcome you all into the course. I look forward to working with you. I am available for you guys if you want to chat more by phone or by email. I'll try and host some synchronous virtual sessions where I'll be in the classroom if you would like to chat or talk. I'm here for you, and I'm going to support you through this process. It is an asynchronous course. You're going to get out of this coursework exactly what you put into it. You're going to have to do the reading. You're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to do the contemplation and course development assignments that we're working through. Those assignments that you're going to be working through are designed to give you the introduction into the tools of education, not make you an educator. But as you become familiar with these tools, you can begin to develop your craft. Okay. I look forward to working with you all. I'll see you soon.